19 August 1953, Tehran. Before sunrise, the streets were already changing. Some people carried newspapers, others carried weapons, and many had no idea they were stepping into one of the most important covert operations in modern history. Within hours, Iran's government would collapse. But this story did not begin with tanks. It began with oil. In the early 1950s, Iran was sitting on one of the most valuable resources on Earth, oil. But most of that wealth was controlled by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, known today as BP. Britain earned enormous profits from Iranian oil fields. Meanwhile, many Iranian workers lived in harsh conditions near the refineries. Resentment was growing. For many Iranians, the issue was no longer only economic. It was about sovereignty. Who controlled the country's future? Foreign corporations or Iran itself? Then came Mohammad Mosaddegh, an aging nationalist politician with massive popular support. Educated in Europe, careful with his words, but absolutely uncompromising on one issue. Iranian oil had to belong to Iran. In 1951, Mosaddegh became prime minister, and almost immediately he nationalized Iran's oil industry. To millions of Iranians, it was a historic moment, a declaration of independence. But to Britain, it was a direct threat. Because if Iran succeeded, other nations might follow. Entire colonial economic systems could begin collapsing. Britain responded aggressively. Sanctions, economic pressure, international isolation. Iranian oil exports collapsed. The economy tightened. But Mosaddegh refused to reverse course. Inside British intelligence circles, another conclusion was forming. Economic pressure alone would not remove him. So they turned toward Washington. At first, the United States hesitated. President Truman was cautious about direct intervention, but the global atmosphere was changing rapidly. The Cold War was intensifying. American intelligence officials feared Soviet influence expanding through unstable regions. British officials understood exactly how to exploit that fear. Mossadegh's nationalism was reframed as a possible communist threat. Whether the threat was real mattered less than whether it could justify intervention. Then, in 1953, Dwight Eisenhower entered the White House. The new administration was far more willing to use covert power. Soon, the CIA approved a secret operation, Operation Ajax. The objective was simple: remove Mosaddegh, restore Western influence, protect oil access. But the real mechanism behind the coup was far more disturbing, because this operation was not based primarily on military invasion. It was based on narrative control. CIA officers arrived in Tehran carrying money, propaganda plans, political contacts, and psychological warfare strategies. Secret payments moved through newspapers, journalists, religious figures, street organizers, and military officials. The operation depended on one terrifying principle. If enough people believe a government is collapsing, eventually it starts collapsing for real. At first, the coup nearly failed. Mosaddegh discovered parts of the plan. The Shah fled Iran. Many CIA officials feared the operation was over. But then, something changed. Propaganda intensified, crowds became larger, military factions shifted, and Tehran entered a state of psychological panic. On 19 August 1953, the final phase began. Armed groups flooded the streets.
Government buildings were attacked, radio stations were seized, military units switched allegiance, and slowly the state itself began to break apart. Mossadegh's house was surrounded. Fighting erupted across Tehran. By the end of the day, his government had collapsed. The Shah returned to power. Political opposition was crushed. Secret police organizations expanded, and for many Iranians, democracy had been destroyed through foreign intervention. But the deeper consequences were only beginning. Distrust toward the West intensified across Iran, and the memory never disappeared. 26 years later, the Iranian Revolution exploded. Anti-American anger became central to the new political order. Many historians trace part of that anger directly back to Operation Ajax. But Iran was not the only target. 1 year later, another democratically elected government would face covert intervention, this time in Guatemala. And once again, corporate interests, Cold War fears, and covert operations would merge. If you want more hidden geopolitical operations, covert wars, and untold historical events, subscribe to Histovyn. Next episode, Guatemala, 1954. How corporate power and the CIA helped trigger decades of violence. Because sometimes the most important wars in history are the ones most people never see.